Nobody was there. That was the first thing Cole Hargrove noticed when he walked through the arrival doors at Clarksburg Regional. No face, no sign, no sound that belonged to him. Just the flat hum of fluorescent lights and a gray November sky pressing down on the glass like it had somewhere better to be. He adjusted the duffel strap on his shoulder. Third deployment done. 34 years old. Left hand trembling inside his jacket pocket where no one could see it. He hadn't told anyone his flight number. Wasn't sure why. Maybe because coming home felt like arriving somewhere he no longer had a right to. He'd missed Wren's 7th birthday. Her 8th. And the worst piece of her 9th. The part where she learned her mother wasn't coming back. Cole walked through the parking lot alone. The cold hit his face, and he didn't flinch. He'd stopped flinching at weather a long time ago. It was the small things now, a car backfiring, a door slamming 2 rooms over, that sent ice straight through him. He found his truck where he'd left it 11 months ago, climbed in, and sat without starting the engine for a full 4 minutes. What are you waiting for when someone you love finally comes home? Drop it in the comments. If you love emotional, powerful stories, don't forget to like and subscribe right now. Drop your country in the comments. Let's see how global this amazing community really is. He was 34, and he felt like he was already gone. But something was waiting for him on Birchwood Lane. He just didn't know it yet. The porch railing gave way the second Cole touched it. He caught himself, looked at the rotted wood in his hand, and set it down on the front step like evidence. The gutters sagged off the left side of the roof. 2 window shutters hung at wrong angles. The house looked exactly the way grief looked from the outside, like something that used to hold itself together and simply stopped trying. He stood there a moment, then picked up his duffel and went inside. That afternoon, he drove to his sister Patrice's house to get Wren. His daughter was waiting at the front door before he even cut the engine. 9 years old. Copper hair. Her father's stubborn chin. She came down the steps fast and hit him so hard he nearly lost his footing, and then she held on. Too long. The kind of hold that told him she'd been rehearsing it. He felt her small fingers pressing into his back like she was checking that he was solid. "Daddy," she whispered into his shoulder. "Are you staying this time?" He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He pulled her tighter instead. He didn't know that next door, someone else had also run out of words, and had chosen silence for a completely different reason. Renata Holloway did not wave. That was the first thing people in Clarksburg noticed about her. She'd moved into the pale yellow Craftsman next door to the Hargrove house 18 months ago with 2 suitcases and no conversation, and she had kept it that way every day since. 31 years old. Former attorney at a D.C. firm where the partners wore $4,000 suits and smiled at you while deciding how to use you. She'd walked away from all of it. Or been pushed. Depending on who you asked, and nobody in Clarksburg knew enough to ask correctly. The town had a word for her: cold. She didn't show up to the neighborhood cookouts. Declined the church invitations slipped under her door. Stood at her kitchen window in the mornings with coffee and the posture of someone who had learned, early and hard, that being visible was dangerous. But her eyes, the few people who'd gotten close enough to see them, carried something that wasn't coldness at all. It was calculation. The steady, exhausted look of a person doing constant math on who could be trusted. What Renata had brought back to Clarksburg, hidden in plain sight, was about to become everyone's problem. The letter was sitting on top of the kitchen counter when Cole came downstairs at 7 in the morning. He'd seen the envelope the night before and left it there on purpose, the way you leave a bone X-ray face down before the doctor comes in. He flipped it over now. Foreclosure proceedings. 30-day notice. His VA benefits, delayed. Paperwork error, they said. He'd filed 3 times. His sister Patrice had her own 3 kids and a husband on disability. There was no safety net. There was no next call to make. Then his phone rang. Wren's school counselor. Calm voice, careful words. Wren had stopped speaking in class entirely. Not just pulling back. Gone silent. The counselor used the phrase acute stress response, and Cole stood at the kitchen counter holding the phone and felt the room tilt. He'd carried wounded men across open terrain. Stayed awake for 60 hours straight in temperatures that cracked rifle scopes. Functioned when functioning seemed impossible. But at 11 o'clock that night, he sat down on his kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, left hand trembling in his lap, and he could not think of a single next move. Then someone knocked on his front door. He almost didn't answer it. Cole stood in the dark hallway for a full 3 seconds, staring at the door like it might explain itself. Then he opened it. Renata Holloway stood on his porch in a gray wool coat, no apology on her face, no casserole dish in her hands. Nothing soft or rehearsed about any of it. She'd seen the bank envelope earlier that week when she dropped off food Wren had asked for. She'd heard his footsteps through the shared wall for 14 nights straight, back and forth, the pacing of a man fighting something he couldn't shoot. She looked at him the way people look at someone standing too close to an edge. Direct. Steady. Unflinching. She didn't say I'm sorry. She didn't say can I help. She looked him dead in the eyes and said one word. Stay. Just that. One word. And something in Cole Hargrove's chest, something that had been locked and braced and reinforced for 3 deployments, cracked straight down the middle. One word. But it carried the weight of everything she hadn't said in 18 months, and everything she was terrified to admit, even to herself. She told him on a Wednesday. Not all of it. Just enough. Renata sat at Cole's kitchen table with both hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had gone cold, and she spoke in the flat, measured tone of someone who had rehearsed the short version so many times it no longer felt like her own story. Her uncle's name was Preston Aldrich Holloway III. A name that opened doors in Washington the way money opens everything, quietly, completely, and without apology. When her father died, Preston had taken control of the family trust. For years, Renata had believed him. Then she started seeing the wire transfers buried inside estate filings at her own firm. Millions. Moved in pieces small enough not to trigger flags. Her inheritance. Her younger brother Demarion's inheritance. Gone. She had gone to the senior partners with documentation. Within 48 hours, she was fired. Within 72, a gray sedan was parked outside her D.C. apartment with a man inside who never got out and never left. She hadn't come to Clarksburg to heal. She had the documents. She had the proof. What she didn't have was time, because someone, somewhere, was still looking for her. Cole didn't say a word when she finished. He stood up, walked to his utility drawer, pulled out a deadbolt kit, and held it up. Renata looked at him. He looked at her back door. That was the entire conversation. 40 minutes later, the lock was installed, solid, flush, the kind that required real force to break. He tested it 3 times before he put his tools away. No speech. No promise he couldn't keep. Just the work. Renata watched him from the kitchen doorway and felt something shift in her chest that she didn't have a name for yet. The following week, she made one phone call to a former colleague in D.C., the only person from that life she still trusted, and got Cole connected to a veterans legal aid organization that specialized in delayed benefit cases. 12 days later, his VA payments were reinstated. 2 days after that, the bank sent a letter confirming the foreclosure proceedings were paused pending review. Cole read the letter twice, set it on the counter, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. Neither of them named what was forming between them. But Wren noticed. Children always do, and what she did next, nobody expected. It was a Tuesday. Barely 7 in the morning. Cole was standing at the kitchen window with his coffee when he saw it. Wren was at the low picket fence in her winter coat, mittens on, backpack already strapped. Renata was on the other side with a pair of garden shears, cutting back the dead stems of Nora's old rose bushes. Wren watched her for a moment. Then, without any prompt, without any lead-up, she said 2 words through the cold morning air. "Good morning." Renata went still. Then she straightened up, looked at Wren directly, and said it back. Just as quiet. Just as clean. Cole pressed his hand flat against the kitchen window frame and said nothing, because there was nothing to say. His daughter, who hadn't spoken a single word in her classroom in 31 days, had just handed 2 words to the woman next door like they were a gift she'd been saving. Something in his chest came loose in a way that felt permanent. That same afternoon, a car with Virginia plates turned onto Birchwood Lane and parked at the curb across from the pale yellow Craftsman. It felt like a miracle. It was also the moment everything Renata had been running from finally caught up. Renata saw it first. She was coming back from the mailbox when she spotted the dark blue sedan idling across the street. Virginia plates. Tinted windows. Engine running. She didn't move for 3 full seconds. Then she walked straight inside, locked both deadbolts, the old one and Cole's new one, and stood with her back against the door. Cole was on her porch 8 minutes later. He'd seen her face through the window. He didn't need an explanation to know what that look meant. He'd seen it before, on men in forward operating bases the moment they understood the perimeter had been found. She told him everything she hadn't said on Wednesday. The full version. Preston's name, his reach, the judges he'd bought, the partners at her old firm still on his payroll. The fact that she had a flash drive with every wire transfer, every falsified filing, locked in a fireproof box under her bedroom floorboard. Cole listened without interrupting. When she finished, he asked one question. "Is the drive backed up anywhere else?" She nodded. He looked back at the sedan. His left hand was completely still. He had been handed a mission he never asked for. But standing there, looking at 18 months of fear written across Renata Holloway's face, Cole realized something that surprised him. He hadn't felt this certain about anything since before the war. Preston Holloway had never once considered Clarksburg, West Virginia. That was his first mistake. His second was assuming that a disgraced attorney hiding in a small town had no one in her corner. He did not account for a man who had spent 12 years learning exactly how people with power moved, and exactly how to stop them. Cole contacted a Veterans Network attorney who passed the case documents to a federal whistleblower advocate in Pittsburgh. Renata's evidence didn't go to Preston's judges. It went directly to the SEC field office in Philadelphia, filed under a protected disclosure. Preston Holloway's name appeared in a federal inquiry notice 11 days later. The gray sedan never came back to Birchwood Lane. 3 weeks after that, on a quiet Saturday morning, Wren sat at Renata's kitchen table with a box of crayons and drew a picture. 3 figures. A tall man with a square jaw, a woman with dark hair, and a small girl with copper curls. All 3 of them standing inside a yellow house. She slid it across the table to Renata without a word. Cole saw it later that evening. He stood in Renata's kitchen and held that drawing for a long time. He had come home from war with nothing but guilt and a trembling left hand. He had not expected to find a reason to be steady again. But there she was, next door, all along. And Wren had drawn it before either of them had the courage to say it out loud. This time, he was staying. If this story moved you, if you know someone who has been carrying too much alone for too long, share this with them right now. And if you want more stories like this one, stories about real courage, quiet strength, and the people who show up when no one else does, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you never miss one. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today.